So look out, people. Housing shortages are going to be on the rise, and look out for the NIMBY battles in a suburb coming towards you. So.
With that said, we'll move to our next point, and pretty much what we'll talk about now is the housing shortages. We all know that that's continuing to grow. Housing shortages keep growing. There are interesting stats that you've got here, Stephen. So if you could go through that, explain what that means and what's.
So built into this budget is an increase to the housing shortage. It's structurally built into the budget. And here's why. The Labor government is going to bring into this country 195,000 immigrants. And we're not talking immigrants who are highly skilled, highly everything. We're talking refugees. We're talking low-skilled people. We're talking the majority of the 195,000. I think it's the 95,000 part are pretty much refugees or people that have someone already settled here. I forget the term, and then now the brothers, sisters, wives, uncles, cousins, and that can come and join them. So it's part of a problem. They're all going to need somewhere to live. We've already got, I think the number I said was about 180,000 homes short. That was just in New South Wales. The countrywide number, I was dumbfounded. It's in the 350 to 400,000 range of homes that we are currently short now. And this has come about because the floods, the cyclones that we've had in the last few years have wiped out a lot of housing. There's a lot of people living in tents or living at rough, living in caravans and so forth, living on people's couches. There's 4 and 5 families to a home. And that's because of the natural disasters and flooding that we have. And because we built homes on floodplains when, we knew it was floodplains, and we put them on slab and ground rather than putting them 12 feet in the air. There's a reason people in the 50s built houses in the air, because fucking floods, people. It's not rocket science. So that's all structurally built into the economy and built into the budget. Now, the budget actually goes, okay, we're going to try and solve this problem. We're going to build 1 million new homes over 10 years, right? So that's 100,000 homes a year. If they get to, you got to read the fine print. The fine print basically means they're only committing to 10,000 homes for socially, what do they call it? Socially disadvantaged people. So the low, what do you call it? Social housing. And the state governments, so all state governments are going to contribute another 10,000. So there's 20,000 homes. 20,000 homes out of 1 million homes, so there's 980,000 short. Because who's going to build them? No one knows. We've got shortages of material, we've got shortages of the rest of it. The other thing is, it was quite funny that Anastasia Palaszczuk, Queen Palaszczuk up here, said, yes, we're going to reduce red tape and we're going to do all this sort of stuff to make it easier to release land to build a home, but we're only going to do it for government-owned land. We're not going to do it for land that's in the private sphere. Now, we all know governments don't release land, because they want to keep it. They might put it on long-term lease and all that sort of stuff, but developers aren't going to develop on long-term leases. That's normally going to be pastoral and so forth and so forth. A lot of councils turned around and said, no, we're not going to do anything because we're going to keep to our city planning. The only way that we can build 1 million new dwellings for people is they're going to have to be in brownfield sites in inner city Melbourne, inner city Sydney, Adelaide, Brisbane, Hobart, Canberra, wherever. Now, that's all well and good. So we're going to create more ghettos. We're going to create more congestion in the city. So if you're going to build 1 million new homes, actually, let's just break it back down to the 100,000. So if we divide the million by 10, that's 100,000 new homes. Meanwhile, immigration's 195,000, and we've already got a shortage of 300,000. Now, structurally built into the budget means that if everything goes well and each immigrant, right, say we divided that 195,000 by half, right, which gives us a round figure 100,000. Because I'm saying there's 2 people to a family, right? So out of those 195,000 people coming in, we're dead matching. But we do know that the only thing committed by state and federal governments is 20,000 homes over 10 years. So that's 10,000, say 20,000 homes, that's 2,000 homes. So we've got 100,000 families, 2,000 homes, 98,000 homes short to go on to the current. This is built into the budget, right? Now, where are we going to get the timber, the glass, the steel? Because we're shutting down all our industries that supply that. It's the best fiction that I've seen written that has come across as truth. There is just no way known to man that we can fill this gap with traditional housing styles. So that's why one of the investment things that I'm doing is the tiny home stuff, because I think that's going to be a huge solution to our problem that we have out there. It's a quick, easy way of getting people back into housing. It's a quick, easy way of getting people into the rural areas where we actually need the jobs and the workers and so forth. Bringing people into an inner city area, which is where it's easier to build 10,000 dwellings because you're doing it in a 60-story high-rise rather than single dwellings on land. The other problem we've got is the NIMBY situation this country is famous for, not in my backyard. So if you're in a city, in a western city, Sydney or somewhere like that, and you've got a 900 square metre block in one of the older parts of town, and the council changes the planning rules, that next door, they're going to put 12 apartments. Well, you're going to complain because you don't want people looking in your backyard. Might even devalue your property to the point that the only person willing to buy your property is a greedy developer, right? So then that feeds back into more housing shortage because no one wants to build the apartments and they object to it. But two, it goes back into you lose out, because not only now do we have inflation eating away at your asset values and what you take home, now we've got government policy driving down the price of your property. Because especially if it's in a city where you thought, you're sitting on a $3 million home, and now it's going to be surrounded by apartments with everyone peering into your backyard, no one's going to pay you $3 million for a home anymore. Now your home's worth $2.2 million. You've all automatically lost 800 grand. So these are the problems with the housing shortage. It's something that can't be solved by government. Well, it can be solved by government. Everything can be solved by government from one thing: government gets out of the road. Lets landowners or those that control land, as long as they're not being stupid and all the rest of it, go about creating a solution that is good for everyone. The restrictions in places like Victoria on putting granny flats in people's backyards, and the costs of the DA and the development application and the permits and all that sort of stuff, and the time, 6 to 8, 12 months, maybe 2 years. that is going to hinder any of the growth of these things. So look out, people. Housing shortages are going to be on the rise, and look out for the NIMBY battles in a suburb coming towards you. So yeah, and we're still going to replace all the homes.
Do you think governments will?
Yeah, mate.
Do you think governments will actually see tiny homes as a solution or not? Because Sophie just put a comment there saying she had friends wanting to join us in our land and found out we weren't allowed to have a tiny home added here.
Yeah. Some councils will. So the biggest thing that you got to remember with housing is you've got 3 layers of government, and pretty much you've got 4 layers of government, because you've got your next door neighbour who's also a layer of government doing the NIMBY thing. So you've got to deal with federal government regulations around environmental acts and all the rest of it. Then state government acts, building codes and all the rest of the crap and restrictions on this, that and the other. Then you got councils with their planning, which is half of their planning schemes are just shit. They really are crap. They're archaic, and they're designed to keep the banks happy. And most of the stuff around housing is designed to keep the banks happy. Is all to do with, well, if there's too much supply of housing, house prices will naturally come down, so banks will lose money because they'll go underwater on the current mortgages and so forth and so forth. The other thing is, with higher home prices and inflated housing prices, you're going to lose out on stamp duty. So state governments lose out. Councils lose out because their rates are tied to land value, right? So the higher the land value, because of shortage of supply, the more rates the councils get. So it's not in the interest of government or banks or homeowners to solve the housing shortage. So self-interest at all levels is going to come into play here, and we're just going to drive ourselves into the ground when it comes to housing.